FX SD40 3166, a loaded boxcar being used as a buffer car, and 72.111 tank cars loaded with 30,000 gallons of crude oil. The engineer parked his train on the main line instead of the adjacent siding, since MMA used it routinely to store empty boxcars. The Nantes siding has a derail, though, that could stop unnecessary train movement from the siding. According to Transport Canada, it's very unusual to leave an unattended train parked on the main line, but there were no regulations to prevent such behavior. The engineer shut down all the engines except 5017 to keep air pressure supplied to the train's air brakes, and also applied a number of the manual handbrakes. The engineer also attempted a brake test, but incorrectly left the locomotive's air brakes on during the test. So this gave the false impression that the handbrakes alone could hold the train, when in reality, they couldn't. The engineer then contacted the rail traffic controller in Farnham, Quebec, to advise that the train was secure. Then, the engineer contacted the rail traffic controller in Bangor, Maine, to report that the lead engine was experiencing a lot of mechanical difficulties throughout the trip, and that excessive black smoke was billowing from its exhaust, likely from a faulty turbocharger. Typical GE. Expecting the smoke to settle, they agreed that they would deal with the situation the following morning for the next crew. Having finished his work, the engineer departed by taxi for a local hotel for the night. But shortly after, the Nantes Fire Department, as well as a police officer from the Siren, Quebec's Lac-Mégantic detachment, responded to a 911 call from a local citizen at 2350 who reported a fire on the lead locomotive. This was the one that was smoking. Before fighting the fire on the engine, its prime mover was immediately shut down. This was standard procedure with the fire department when dealing with any sort of fire. The fire department quickly extinguished the small oil fire on the locomotive and then notified MMA's rail traffic controller in Farnham to report that the train was now safe again. MMA didn't grant permission to the engineer to return to the scene, however, instead summoning a track maintenance foreman who was unfamiliar with the operation of air brakes. By 013, two MMA track maintenance employees had arrived from Lac-Mégantic to supervise on the train. The Nantes firefighters shortly thereafter left the scene as the MMA employees confirmed to the police officer and to Farnham rail traffic controller that the train was indeed safe. But now there was trouble. With all the locomotives shut down, the air compressor could no longer supply air to the air brake system, so air naturally began to leak from the brake system. The main air reservoirs were slowly being depleted and gradually reducing the effectiveness of the locomotive's air brakes. At 056, the air pressure had dropped so much that the handbrakes and air brakes could no longer hold the train, and it slowly began to roll downhill toward the town of Lac-Mégantic, just over 7 miles away. With no track circuit to detect the runaway train and alert the rail traffic controller, the train became an unmanned runaway. MMA2 entered the town at 63 miles an hour, entering the curve in an area with a speed limit of 10 miles an hour. And then the worst happens. "63 of the 72 tank cars, as well as the buffer car, derailed, with many of the tank cars rupturing badly from the impact. About 6 million liters of petroleum crude oil was quickly released, and the fire began just almost immediately, generating a ball of fire 3 times the height of the downtown buildings. The fire was